You're live.
Okay, good. So, we're back with rooftop ramblings.
And the rooftop means that we get distracted by the aeroplane
Exactly.
over above.
The weather finally permit us to do this podcast as we originally intended to do. This
not
is right
living
on a
room
rooftop.
ramblings,
Yeah,
exactly.
It's not salon ramblings anymore, it's rooftops, so it's more legit that
If we
way.
disappear suddenly, it means that we've fallen through the roof into the
Into
printer
the
below.
printer below, yeah. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. So yeah, this is the way it was always supposed to be. Now, today's topic of conversation is going to be less cheerful, or yeah, we'll
Wow, way to build it up.
way to build it up. Yeah. Well, we're going to see if it's cheerful or not. That's the main topic. That's
if
the
I
main
can-
issue. So what happened this morning in Paris? Yeah, this one is doing Facebook, so
Oh, right, okay.
right in it.
Yeah.
We are live. So what happened this morning was that there was an attack at Orly airport, and there was an still unidentified attacker that tried to take a rifle away from the soldier that was a part of the Sentinel force and was securing the airport. And then that attacker was killed by the police. So there's a couple of interesting things to be said about it. So first, the attacker was not,
Let's say none of them then.
as we usually do, right? No, but the thing is, the attacker was killed by the police, not by the soldier that was attacked. I think that's quite strange. Second of all, the thing is that I think soldiers should have been able to handle the attacker without necessarily killing him. And the third of all, what are the repercussions of all that? So the Orly airport was evacuated, of course, all the flights are cancelled. Some 3,000 people were evacuated, so the flights are being redirected. So every time that something similar happens, you know, it's not only the loss of lives, I mean, although that's the most important thing, but it's also economic issues like
I think I know where you're going with
everything
this.
grinds to a
It's
halt,
becoming
right?
the new suicide on the metro type thing where
You just do a
businessmen
suicide on a...
businessmen lose 1 hour of work.
Which is valued a lot, but it's not. I think it's a butterfly effect, right? So it's like all these things that happen because the flights got cancelled and all these people got perhaps touched in much more
it's a-
than they would.
Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan movie in the making.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure that those were their intentions. Now, to continue with the story, why is this important? Well, I did some research on the subject as soon as it happened.
Boris, whoa.
Whoa! You did some research?
Yeah, hang on a sec.
Yeah, we
It's
don't do
against
that
the-
on this podcast.
Yeah, it's against the spirit of the show.
Yeah, I agree. Well, against all of our usual practices, I did do some very superficial research. And I was actually following all of the social networks covering the event because all of the news sources didn't really have a lot to
Is
go
there a
into.
pray for Orly hashtag this time? or-
No, that didn't happen. It might happen, but the thing is very fresh. It only happened a couple of hours ago. That's the thing. So we don't really have a lot of information. And I was reading all of these other places like Le Monde, Figaro, Parisien, etc. And they didn't really know a lot about it. So I went to their Facebook pages, and I read the comments. And I think that this is the interesting part. That's also going to be a topic of the conversation, is that how people were incredibly blasé and how they were like joking with the whole thing. So the first 20 comments on Le Monde and Figaro news were about poor grammar in the news and about poor orthography. And they were criticizing the journalist who wrote this because he wrote that the moment was killed at the Orly airport.
So it was the moment that was killed, not the
And it was like
attacker,
rip
yeah.
moment and like oh poor moment, and I'm like, you know, someone got killed. I mean, it's kind of a serious thing, you know. So, and it was just like this overall, you know, cynical spirit of no one was really worried about the whole terrorism thing happening in France. They were just
Yeah, but
like
I think-
making jokes and you know.
Yeah, but I think the people, all these events are always immediately labelled as terror attacks, whether they're before there's any actual evidence that they are or not. Like,
Yeah.
I think traditionally a terror attack was, you know, someone does an event that's designed to create a sense of terror among
So do you think they
terrorised
need to
population.
yell Allahu Akbar for it to be a terrorist attack, like at least? Or
Yeah, but
if they don't,
well,
it
a lot
doesn't.
of the times, well, not a lot of the times. So there is a phenomenon of death by cop, which is when you're a if you want to commit suicide, you do suicide by cop. So you but it means you go into it.
I like where this is going. Yeah.
No, but this is actually this is a thing where you attack a policeman so that they're forced to pull their arm.
Why would you do that though? Why wouldn't you just take your own life?
Because it's an easy way to, well, not an easy way, but it's a way of taking your own life. Like if you attack a army person or a policeman, they're going to eventually shoot you fatally. Like
yeah, but you're going to traumatize that person for life, and then it's going to be all this administrative thing for them, and they're going to be, you know, it's just like you're fucking up someone else's life as well, not only your own.
Most of the ways you commit suicide, you're going to. Oh, I don't really want to be talking about it, but most of the ways you commit suicide, you're going to be fucking up someone's life, like a family or the train driver or whatever. Like,
well, that's the thing. That's an interesting thing you mentioned, because here in Paris, at least, there is this phenomenon or a habit, if you will, a custom, that when people do suicides, they do them in the subways, so they throw themselves under the train, and then what they do, they block off the entire metro, because of course that line will not be used for the rest of the day, and you know, all the people who are in the metro station, they get traumatized, the driver is traumatized. It's just like this way of making a big bang, you know, a big splash with your suicide. So it's not a private affair. Do you think it's a part of the whole narcissistic selfie culture, that even if you do suicide, you want it to be, you know, with style?
No idea. I think probably I have no idea. Like I think if you're suicidal, you're so withdrawn from the world.
You don't necessarily think about how many hashtags and likes you're gonna get.
But this is the thing of the thing that people have been so quick to label it as a terrorist attack in Orly, when it seems like it does seem quite, if you're going to do a suicide attack, you want to be attacking the population of the army. So for me it's a bit.
Where do you draw a line though, to you personally? Like, what is the difference between a terrorist attack and anything else? Someone wanting to kill themselves,
if it's got an ideology. If it's underpinned by an ideology and they're wanting to affect some kind of political change, then that's a terror attack. And if they're just attacking a policeman or an army person in an airport, then it's just a suicide or a madman.
What are the chances that this is just a ghetto thing, you know, ASAB, like, like anti-system, not necessarily terroristic, or not necessarily related to Middle East,
Who knows? Like I don't know. But this is the thing. Like now that we're forced to now discuss any random attack that happens in any public place, as the immediate reaction is that it's a terror attack again. In natural fact.
What are the chances of someone just trying to make like a very stupid joke? I mean, that's something that came across my mind when I would see soldiers, walking around with their, automated weapons. Like, what would happen if I just jump in front of them and yell Allahu Akbar, without any weapons or something? Like, what would their reaction be? I mean, I would never do it, of course.
Probably a bad one.
Yeah, probably a bad one. That's why I'm not doing it. But someone was just like, yeah, let's see what happens,
Yeah, but obviously, if you're attacking someone on the, if you're attacking someone with a gun, like, eventually things are gonna escalate to the point where they use it. I mean, it's not like this guy would have been picking a random person to attack. Like, it does seem, and if he did, it does seem like a very, very poor choice to attack the only person in the entire airport with a massive gun. I mean, you've got to think it was intentional.
So you think it's necessarily political, even if it's not?
No, I don't think it's political at all. It doesn't sound political. And there was no news alerts or anything on my phone when I woke up saying, terror attack. Like, I think people are just like.
So I think people are just thinking it's just a random attack. Someone attacked.
Well, who knows? And before you know anything what the guy's motives were.
Or was it just like some terrorist forgot his gun back home and he was like, yeah, let's make do with what we
I try not to work without my badge. Shit. Yeah, but this is the sad thing now in Paris is twofold. Is that firstly, whenever an event happens, everyone's like, it's a terror attack again. And the second one is that when these terrible incidents do happen, we're like, But
yeah, that's another thing I wanted us to talk about is like people losing their sensitivity and just, you know, accepting these terror or quasi-terrorist or pseudo-terror attacks as a normal thing, you know, like, do you see that happening?
Yeah, but
every
it's always
next
happened, like...
attack is just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but it's not a...
Your GPS
Jesus.
is going off, so.
Yeah, Jesus. It's, ringing an ex-boss. It's unlucky.
Bad sign.
Bad sign. Awkward.
Speaking of premeditated bomb attacks,
Yes.
ex-bosses.
Turn that one off. But the only reason any attack has an emotional impact on you is if it touches something personal about you, though, right? I mean, if some guy goes mad at an airport and gets shot by a policeman, I'm not personally affected by it.
Yeah, but you were personally affected when they attacked Carrion like that.
Yeah, but that was because it was my local bar and I knew, and it was in my very neighbourhood, and it was you know, it was something I felt very personally because it could have been. I felt there was a very real sense that it could have been me.
But don't you think that attitude is exactly like being slightly cynical? It's like, if it's close to me, I care. If it's away from me, I don't. So it's just like, you know, take it as it comes.
Possibly it is, but like, I can't pretend to care about something I don't care about. Like, honestly, I mean, try caring about any number of things in the news, and honestly, I mean, unless you're feeling something that's personal, I think it's.
Yeah, but what about your own feeling of your own personal safety? Like, you could say that there are these terrorist attacks or pseudo-terrorist attacks happening, and there's a certain frequency to it. So let's say a couple of weeks ago, there was a thing at the Louvre, and that was basically the same thing. Someone went for a gun
from a policeman, exactly.
From a policeman, and then they got shot. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think they were killed; they were just wounded, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same thing, right? So is this like?
I don't think that's a terror attack again. Like, I think it's just some person wanting to get shot.
Did I get to the bottom of that? I think that person was carrying a knife or something.
Well, yeah, exactly. But again, like, it's not as if it was a subway attack where they went and you know, in Germany the other week they had the guy with it was an axe who attacked a whole bunch of passengers on the metro. I mean, you could say that was a terror attack. But when they're attacking a person who has a armed weapon, who's armed with a weapon, I mean, I don't think it's a terror attack. That's they're just wanting to get killed, really.
Yeah, wow, that's an interesting point. Well, do you think the society sees it that way as well? Like they?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, the incident today. I doubt we'll be talking about it in 2 days' time. Like, I don't think it has any wider repercussions. It's not, like the terror attacks that happened here in November 2015. That has a wider implication because it was actually designed to really psychologically damage a whole entire populations, whereas the attack that happened today was not you know, what do you take from that? Oh, I'm never going to go to Orly again. Like,
I think I was only there once to begin with, so you know.
Cheap a lot of the cheap airplanes fly out of Orly, so it's it'd be sad if you had to remove Orly from your list of destinations.
Yeah, I know, I have to think about it now. Well, there was another interesting aspect of this entire event that, well, I personally found interesting, and that's, again, reaction on social networks, that many people would connect this to the oncoming elections.
Oh, which start today?
Officially.
So right.
Officially, they've announced all of the candidates and everything, and you would have all these, like, very fast, random conspiracy theories about how they're trying to prolong the state of emergency and how, oh, that's quaint!
Yeah, but
exclamation mark!
How can they be arguing that? Because the socialist government isn't even. I mean, Hollande's not running again. I mean,
they do have their candidate.
They have a candidate. You know, he's a joke candidate. Like, practically, honestly, like standing on a platform of legalizing marijuana. I mean, that's not really a.
No, I vote for that. You know.
As like if it was in the Senate maybe, but like as not a.
I think he had some other agendas as well. It was not the only one. I think he had some labor laws to be changed and like working hours and. You know.
Yeah, but it was symptomatic of the fact that was actually on his agenda that he's articulating. That you think, wow, this is actually something that's really concerning the people of France. Is that marijuana isn't legal, and that's really affecting our way of life.
I think he's trying to bring all the potheads to
exactly.
Exactly. No, but the thing is, like, all of again, those are very small bullet point conspiracy theories. I mean, as much as you can fit in a Facebook status or a Twitter status.
As many bullets as you can fit in the face, like a JFK type.
Yeah, very, very poor joke there. Yeah, but again, much in line with the rest of the quality. So no, they were saying that this is something that will actually benefit, Front National and Le Pen, and they were saying like, oh, it's quaint that that's something that goes right to her favor. She's going to profit from this, like she's been saying this the whole time, and
maybe that explains why they're not keen to talk about it as in the scope of a terrorist attack, even though I don't think it is one. And again, I strongly doubt that this guy who's done it was doing it to push his own political agenda, right? Mm-hmm. And what would that be? Well, he's not pro-National Front. He's suiciding himself anyway. He's not going to say, I'm going to prove them National Frontists right. Like,
well, if you push the conspiracy theory agenda far enough, you could say that they could recruit a suicidal person to further their cause. I mean, I've seen a couple of movies.
Wow, I mean,
on that account,
starring Denzel Washington. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm always. My theory with conspiracy theories is that
it's all a big conspiracy.
It's all a big conspiracy. I mean, most political parties couldn't even organise a meat raffle, let alone no, but I mean, like the number of like September 11, it was an inside job. It's like,
I think it's way above their capacity.
Yeah, exactly. This is coming from a president who couldn't even read a children's book, like he read it upside down.
Wait, but again, what you're saying now is, deeply subversive. You're actually saying that terrorists who do pull off those attacks are far better organized than our governments.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Essentially, it's like, well,
should we have them?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead, then, like.
They want to.
I mean, logistic-wise, they're better organized. That's what you're saying.
On a reform agenda.
Yeah, reform is government. These guys can pull off a job,
we
right?
get things done.
Yeah, get things done.
Even if it's an inside job. Yeah. We get the inside job done.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, I mean, at least that's what the French Facebook is saying. Those were the first comments. I think there was like 400 of them.
I think a lot of people in France, well, in Paris, are petrified of the prospect of the National Front actually having a significant impact in the election, and I think that's probably why they're very quick to say no, this wasn't a terrorist attack, and A, this wasn't a terrorist attack, and B, it wasn't, even if whatever it wasn't politically motivated.
Wait, so what you're saying is that because they're so afraid of the Front National, that they would label something as not a terrorist attack, even though it might be. Like, so they would just want to minimize everything that could be beneficial to the National Front.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
Now we're seeing things in every possible attack is now viewed as being possibly a terror attack. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't think that's the case. I mean, in Paris last year, there was in 2015 there was a couple of terrorist attacks. It wasn't just the Charlie Hebdo and the ones in the 10th. I mean, there was a few other random knife attacks and stuff. But I mean, even yesterday, was it yesterday? Thursday. There was the attack in Grasse, which is the head of the capital of perfume, where the guy went to school with a whole bunch of weapons and.
That sounds so American. Like, how did it happen?
I know, right?
And
wounded his principal, the principal, the headmaster. Yeah, but even then, initially they said, "Oh, terror attack," and it's like, well, and eventually they're like, "Well, it was just some."
Yeah, but wait a minute. Like, you're saying that the way you qualify something as a terrorist attack is if it has an ideological and a political background, right? But you could argue that attacking a school principal is an ideological act.
Unless we uncover a manifesto that the kid's written saying that he's against the entire educational system. Like,
no, but you're attacking a figure of authority, right? Is what you're doing. Like, so you're basically attacking the system because
if you're a upset kid at school and you're attacking your teacher, I mean, it's not a. I don't think that's an ideology. That's just.
Well, see, if we compare it to the not terrorist, but attacks in America where you have a kid in school or in high school or in university.
They don't call them terror attacks. They call them mass shootings.
Yeah, but what's the difference? Like,
Well,
that's the thing. So they don't
Well, the difference
push a
is that-
certain agenda. They're just fed up with
well, exactly.
whatever.
Yeah.
But you see, I see that. I think there's difference because there's difference if you shoot at your fellow students or if you shoot at teachers. I think there's difference to be made because when you're shooting at your fellow students, you're shooting at your equals in a way. And here you're shooting at figures of authority, especially if it's a school principal. Then it's like the biggest authority you have in school, right? So it's,
No,
it's
I
a
think
message.
as a 15-year-old boy, I don't know if you have that much to say. Like, I don't think.
Yeah, but let's say, okay, let's imagine being a frustrated teenager. Remember what it was
Imagine,
like.
imagine,
yeah.
Just imagine, yeah.
As if we never knew.
Yeah.
But so the people that you dislike or that you want to lash out against, I think would more likely be your fellow students or people around you, like your immediate environment. Like, I mean, because okay, or it would be the teachers.
Doesn't make it a terror attack. Like the IRA, that used to be the terror attack, was leaving a bomb in central London in a bin, like, or the Basque, the ETA attackers who do bombs in public
like the
spaces.
Unabomber type of thing.
No, Unabomber was different again. He was Unabomber. He was
Sending, yeah.
them in the post. I mean, that was a type of terror attack because it was sent to public.
Yeah, that would never
offices.
happen nowadays, though. I mean, they would check all those things like.
Yeah, but
Can you imagine like a bomb going all through the postal system.
Even in the, this happened on Friday here. There was a bomb sent to the IMF headquarters, and
Oh really? Yeah, that happened as well.
like we've been, like so we've
Oh
got,
come on,
in,
but
in
that,
three,
that
we've
is a
got
terrorist
three,
attack. Come
we've got
on, like
three,
that has to be a terrorist attack. I mean, it really has to be.
Some
Like
guy,
IMF,
some guy got. I know it's exactly. It has. It didn't. Some guy got minorly injured. Like, and that's the way the news reporters. Hard to say whether it was a paper cut or whether it was something. Whether he lost a hand. Like,
No,
I
but
don't
see,
know.
this is exactly my point. Like, this is exactly the attitude where you're like,
The
blasé and like, oh, whatever. If it's not at least 100 people, it's not a terrorist attack. I mean,
Yeah,
okay, you could say if you send a bomb to the IMF, that's a statement in itself, right?
Yeah.
That's a political statement.
That for me is more of a terror attack than some guy shooting a policeman in an airport or attacking his school principal. I mean, that is actually a political statement. The other two are not, for me, remotely
See,
terror
but
attacks.
the thing is, I think
Without
I only...
also without knowing any of the facts about these things either. So maybe it's going to come to light that
Oh, of course, this is just a wild speculation.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
based on zero information
Yeah.
to me as we do it.
Mm.
But yeah, see, the thing is that I vaguely remember hearing about the IMF thing, like really vaguely.
Mm.
I mean, if you hadn't mentioned it now, I'd completely forgot it.
Yeah, I'd actually completely forgotten it. It was only when I
Yeah.
just realised after talking about terror for 20 minutes. I'm
See,
like,
but
"Oh,
we're
what's that
talking,
thing?"
yeah, but we're talking about this, and you mentioned all these things that happened in the last couple of weeks.
Last couple of
Russ
weeks, it was
and
the last
IMF.
3 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and
there's
but
now
no one
three
seemed-
things in 3 days.
Yeah, but no one seems upset. And you're just, oh yeah, there was this thing, there was
Yeah,
that
but
thing, there was
it's
the other
just- As
thing.
I said, it comes down to, was I personally affected, or does it have a remote impact on my way of life, or is it going to affect the way I vote or the way I do things?
Yeah,
Absolutely
but you
not
can
at all.
look, but you can imagine
Zero
yourself, being on the airport. You can imagine yourself being in, well, not necessarily
it
school
could've
in
been
Graz, but
It could have been at the airport in Belgium when they had the terror attacks in 2016, was it?
yeah, it was
like-
in 2016. Yeah.
2016, like, it could have been there. Again, people just move on. It's not.
So you never project yourself. You never say, oh, what would happen if I was at Orly going to Italy or something like.
Not for that small incident. If it happened in the other week, start of the year in Melbourne, when there was a guy who drove his car into a whole bunch of pedestrians in Burke Street Mall, which is a pedestrian strip. That was really sick, and I really felt for it. But that's because I had a personal connection to Melbourne, and again, it wasn't a terror attack. It was just some kind of really seriously deranged guy who was just an aggressive and deranged guy. And I think that the risk is that we label all type of attacks as terrorist attacks when actually we forget that before it became politically expedient to label everything as a terror attack, which I'd say
But
was
you
after
know, you
September 11.
spent the last 11 years of your life in Paris, right, or 10. So it's kind of normal that you grow some sort of connection to Paris, but yet you say, like, when it happens in Melbourne, I'm concerned, but when it happens in Paris, it's like, who cares, even though you're personally
when
here.
Yeah, but I think it's if someone had attacked a policeman in Melbourne Airport, I wouldn't care.
Oh, okay. So,
Really, like I think attacking a policeman or a military person. I think the guy was doing it on purpose, possibly with the express purpose of getting shot. Like.
yeah. Well, let's have your personal opinion on figures of authority, like school principals, policemen, military personnel. Like, can we trace the lack of your empathy to some deeply seated
Exactly.
angst?
It was Mr. Wingjan in primary school, yeah.
Exactly.
Didn't pay me enough attention. No, either perhaps I'm just not empathetic, but I think again that it comes anytime you feel empathy with someone, it's because you have an emotional connection, or you can really feel yourself in that position. And honestly, no, this isn't going to affect anything I do today or the rest of my life.
Okay, well.
What is it going to affect you? Are you not going to go to Orly Airport, or?
Well, I was just thinking of going there, but now.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Well, I think it's just when you're asking me like what's my personal understanding of it all. I think it contributes to the overall atmosphere of what happens in France, because as I was getting here, I went through Bastille, like Place de la Bastille, and there was a huge rally there, of Mélenchon support, I think. But a lot of police, a lot of
was there 50 people
protesters.
there?
But it was actually more than that. As you said, all of the Mélenchon voters.
Yeah. Every single one of them, yeah.
Oh yeah, all 2,000 of them. So I think it's just, so from an individual perspective, so you're riding your bike as you usually do, and you hear about this thing happening at the airport, and then you see like a massive, police corridor and a lot of protesters, and it just becomes a part of your everyday life. Like that very exceptional situation, or something that's supposed to be exceptional, right, becomes a part of your everyday life, and you're like, oh, this is...
Take the last 48 hours I had here within 200 meters of my house. So Thursday night we go out and with my friend Don, and there's a car drives into a pedestrian when he's crossing the road, and the pedestrian gets angry and goes up to the window, and the driver sprays him with capsicum spray, which then obviously blows into every other bystander's face. So me and Don find ourselves gagging after being effectively capsicum sprayed. Not
the only gagging that.
Yeah, exactly. And then yesterday, 100 meters from my house, there was some Don. This is the way he felt it. I asked him to get some bread, and he couldn't get some bread because the road to the bakery was closed because there'd been some stabbing outside a cafe. I mean, this shit happens in Paris. I mean, the violence is
But would
prevalent.
you say it's on the rise? I mean, was it the case?
Who knows?
A year,
like,
2 years, 3 years ago?
I don't know. I probably. I think I've always experienced violence in France. Not even just Paris, but I've always seen violence here and experienced it.
No, but let's say back in 2010, like for example,
I wouldn't even talk anecdotally. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. Like, without knowing the police figures. I think it's the only way to, unless you can't talk about perception. You can talk about perceptions of crime, but I don't think it's useful to talk about whether violence is on the rise without actually referring to specific statistics.
Oh, yeah, but of course your personal subjective view, would it be like, as you said, the last 3 days,
Well, you could say the number of murders in Paris was horrific in 2015, but that would be because there was that, 2 terror attacks, which both accounted for about, close to 200 deaths. So you could say, oh my God, it was a huge amount of murders. Like, unless you're, my experience is that in France I've always seen violence is a part of everyday life here. And
yeah, but when you compare it to Australia, right?
In Australia we have drunk. Australia, my experience of violence in Australia is that it's very linked to, again, personally, the only violence I see in Australia is getting punched in a bar. It's like, it's linked to alcohol, or, you see people getting king hit. Whereas here it does seem to be just real. My experience of violence here is, the first time it happened is, I was in Montpellier coming home from, I used to work in an Australian bar, and I came home at 4 a.m. and had to hide behind a bin because there was outside my house, there was a woman lying on the pavement with covered in blood and a knife next to her, and
shit.
and then a guy, probably her husband, didn't ask, but getting beaten by a chair. Like three guys were beating him with a chair. I mean, this was a horrifically violent event, and everyone else was looking out of their windows, looking on the first
Eating
floor.
popcorn.
Yeah, exactly. Basically looking at it, and the police took about 20
Or
minutes
hiding
to arrive.
behind a dumpster.
Yeah, I wasn't going to walk into that thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it was that was pretty confronting. So that was my first experience of violence in Paris, and ever since.
Well, in Montpellier. Yeah,
in Montpellier.
in France.
In Paris, I've been punched 3 times in a bar. I would argue all 3 of those occasions were
Your responsibility.
no, not at all.
100%.
Completely random attacks of violence. And then, obviously, as I've said, like I've been, there was a guy firing from his gun in the window just over there. I mean, not right that window, but around the corner. I mean, when I came home for lunch one day, obviously the terror attacks. I mean, there's just violence.
But it makes it sound as if you're living like not in Paris, but in I don't know, some.
I know, right? I know.
Very different city.
But I know.
Like Detroit or.
Yeah, I know. But this is stuff that happens. Like it's that I've lived through. But again, it's just a fact of life here.
See, I've been here. I mean, almost the same amount of time as you have, but I didn't really have like nearly as many experiences of that sort. And I mean, from my personal, subjective perspective, there would be a very considerable surge in these things happening, like terrorist attacks or attacks on police or military personnel, or that.
Yeah, well, attacks on you can talk. Well, yeah,
like,
but
I mean,
also keep in mind that they have put a hell of a lot more number of police and military people on the street since the terror attacks as well. So there's more people to attack.
So what you're saying is that they're actually attracting the attacks.
Possibly.
Because they're being out there, like
because they're out there and
carrying all these weapons out in the open. So
possibly, but I don't know. I mean, I'm just very skeptical of I'm very hesitant to label any attack as a terror attack before all the facts are known about it.
Okay, well, you could say that. I mean, I would see, of course, that aside, but I would see that ever since the Charlie Hebdo thing happened, there was this massive surge of it all happening, or we started paying more attention.
No, it was happening before that. I mean, there was the few years earlier, there was the Mohammed Merah guy in the south. I think he was in Toulouse, kind of. But again, he shot at a whole bunch of police and barricaded himself into his.
Was it the guy who shot at the
like
synagogue and the?
It was the same about the same time. I don't know if it was that guy or whether it was a different one. But there was the guy who shot like 12 kids at a synagogue or something, and shot about 3 military guys, and like so. There is these, and he was a lone wolf attacker. So yes, there has been.
So our future is quite grim, is what you're saying. Like we have a very dim perspective on.
No, but I think the future is positive relative to. I mean, these type of attacks have always been happening. I don't think it's.
But
I think if you look at, I think the actual crime trends are probably getting lower and lower. I mean, it's just it comes down to perception of crime, which is what sways political opinions. Not actual people aren't influenced by actually reading crime stats and saying, oh well, this happened. They're more swayed by the perceptions of do I feel safe or not, and I think that's the terror.
Well, there was an interesting take on it. I was watching this Alain de Botton presentation, TED Talk or whatever, where he was talking about like schooling people on how to live, and he was talking about the news and the impact of the news. And so he said that our news are saturated with reports of violence because our lives are so secluded and we're so protected. And he mentioned an example of an African country that's like the most violent place in the world, I can't remember which. And there's murders like on daily basis everywhere, basically corpses like piling up on the street. I mean, the way he represented it, I think it's less dramatic than that. But he said that when you're watching news in that country, there's like zero reports of it all because it's like normal and no one sees that as newsworthy. And they're like, well, yeah, that happens. What are you gonna do? And here, because it's so out of normal, because it's so outrageous, you know, every time when something happens, it could be all over the news. And watching the news, you could actually, if you were just basing your knowledge, you know, on the news, you would think that it happens much more here than it does there, whereas it's the other way around. Because our news are so saturated by it, and their news are completely free of it. They report on other issues.
Yeah, but again, with this attack that happened at the airport today, I mean, I didn't know about it until you mentioned it. Like, it wasn't, had it been, you know, I think it's not like I received 10 news notifications on my mobile phone saying that there was a terror attack at Orly. And I think that's because people just thought, oh well, from a news perspective, it does sound like it's a single individual who's just.
So you're thinking eventually we might come to the level of that African country whose name I can't remember, where we will just stop thinking about it. It will become everyday occurrence, and it would be just whatever.
Violence is an everyday occurrence. I mean, it is. It happens. It does happen every day. It's only when it actually affects your direct circle or secondary circle that you actually feel it. So, some guy goes nuts and attacks an army person at the airport. Unless they spray a whole bunch of innocent bystanders with.
Luckily this didn't happen. No one got hurt apart from the guy who, you know.
Yeah, and I think the military woman might have been wounded a bit. But.
Well, do you have any closing words, Sam, on this passionate subject?
Stay safe.
Stay safe. Yeah. Don't sit on the cold concrete. Yeah.
I just. I don't know. I think I'm just very hesitant to label every random attack as a terror attack, and I think that seems to be a tendency of recent years is to quickly label things as terror attacks, which later turn out not to be related to. I think for me, the term terror attack has a greater level of significance than just a murder or random act of violence, and I think it should be treated. I think it should be used with care, and I feel that it's a label that's a bit too liberally applied to attacks that aren't terroristic in nature.
So we should be more careful with our words. Those are the words of a journalist,
exactly.
And a potential writer. Well, yeah, I think you're possibly right, but we'll see. You know, as the elections are progressing, I think that's gonna play a lot into it, and you know, we might see, because you know what terrorists are after, they're after attention, right? They want to spread the news of their deeds. So I think there might be more of those things happening. I mean, hope not, but you know,
again,
I mean, elections are such a politically sensitive and monitored event that, you know, everything is heightened, I guess. So, but yeah, let's hope this stops happening, and you know, we can go back to our
Orly Airport on a daily basis.
Yeah, I miss Orly Airport really. Like.
Can't wait to go back there.
Yeah, the good old days.
Take that next flight to Riga. Yeah,
exactly. Well,
all right.
Thanks, Sam, for this enlightening insight, and you can have this phone, and we can stop the filming of that one.